watching live or later, whether you're in the building or live stream, welcome. We begin our service this morning by acknowledging together the First Peoples of this place. Please read with me. We acknowledge the sovereign First Peoples of the land where we gather to worship, the Kaurna people. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and to all descendants of this nation who have cared for this place since creation.
Praying. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot, or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. For this isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks, and a silence in which another voice may speak. So please join me in prayer. For this present moment we find ourselves in, we pause. Holding gently a sense of self that encapsulates our gratitude, our confession, our joy, and our pain. In the whirlwind of past thoughts and emotions, we pause, present to this moment. In the shifting earth of uncertainty that robs us of this day, we pause, present to this moment. In in the fire of anticipation, whether filled with hopefulness or dread. We pause, present to this moment. Present to this moment, present to ourselves, and the resounding silence that lies within. Silence that allows us to hear the whisper of the sacred. Amen. Friends, it is the resounding presence of the sacred that comes to us in the Christ and offers a word of peace. The peace of the Lord be with you. And also with you. Please take a moment to share a sign of peace with one another. You probably saw you have an additional little piece of paper. We discovered this week, somewhere between planning the music for the service earlier in the week and printing the words for distribution, that the version of Draw the Circle Wide that Ruth and I were operating on were two different versions. And so rather than complicating things by trying to teach a different version, we will save that for another day. And so we'll sing Come and Find the Quiet Centre. So apologies to those who are watching this either live stream or later. You don't have the words to Come and Find the Quiet Centre, but we will sing that a little bit later on. Judy, would you bring us our readings, please?
Our first reading today comes from 1 Kings chapters 19 and 1 to 15. And I'm going to give you a little background for today's reading to make it a little easier to understand. Ahab was king of Israel and married Jezebel, daughter of the king of Ethbaal of the Sidonians, who served Baal and worshipped him. It was the prophets of Baal that Elijah had put to the sword prior to today's reading. And we go on to chapter 1, verse 19. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he, Elijah, was afraid, and he got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servants there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones, a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time, touched him and said, "Get up and eat, otherwise the journey will be too much for you." He got up and ate and drank. Then he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Chapter 11, Elijah meets God at Horeb. He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elisha heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael as king over Aram." And our gospel reading comes from Luke, chapter 8, verse 26 to 39. Then they arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. And as he stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him, and he was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles. But he would break the bonds and be driven by the demons into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside, a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherd saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, and Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. Blessed be the name of the Lord, that we might understand his will.
you, Judy. So today in our readings we have two images of an encounter with the divine, or encounter with God, and Jesus. First, we have Elijah, who is in self-exile. He runs off, fearful of his own life, ends up in the desert, the wilderness, for 40 days, a nice parallel, biblical parallels. And the voice was found not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the wind, but in the silence, in the deep listening, waiting, and the intent that Elijah had to wait on God. The second encounter with God is in struggle. And this text from Luke's Gospel doesn't end all wrapped up in a nice bow. It holds together the tension and the struggle of conflict for the demon-possessed man and the community in which he lived. The freedom and the healing that this man found came at a cost and a fear of those around him. And it's perhaps a metaphor of struggle and clash of power. And in amongst these two encounters, we hear two questions. The first is to Elijah, fleeing a broken community and frightened for his life. The voice says, "Elijah, why are you here?" The second is asked of Jesus by the demonic forces occupying the man. And that question is, what have you to do with me? Or what do you want with me? Two questions I want to sit with today. Why are you here? And what do you want with me? To help explore this, I wonder what it is that consumes or possesses us, both individually and as a society. What is it that we're fearful of? What are we afraid of? What do we run away from or seek safety from? These texts are big texts for us today, and like many of the stories we have in our tradition, likely leave us with so many more questions. Questions associated with what's missing as much as what is presented. If you're like me and a few people I've been speaking to this week, it's easy, for example, for us to get fixated on the pigs in this story. Why the pigs? What about the pig herders? Why would Jesus do something that made the people of another town, and indeed another culture, fearful and upset? Equally, we might try to make sense of the condition of the demonic man, or the man who was demon-possessed. Is this a question that is spiritual in nature? Is it simply a mental health condition? Is it an ancient story of people just finding words to explain situations they don't understand? In Elijah's story, we might become consumed with the idea of hearing and recognizing the presence of God. We might long to know and understand what listening into silence entails. We might become focused on what it is to be one amongst many who seeks to persevere even though they are scared of what the repercussions of their life might be. Yet these stories recognise the reality of forces that both pursue and control. Forces that seek to take life or have disregard for life. and forces that possess and control the life of individuals and communities. On one hand, it's really quite simple and easy to distance ourselves from these texts, especially with respect to the demon-possessed man. The one who must be bound up from time to time, seemingly for both his own good and the community's protection. This man who is nameless becomes other. Remember, he's nameless. It is the demons that are named. Legion. The subject of our curiosity and our judgment, perhaps. We might make the mental leap into contemporary society and create a contemporary version of this person. Maybe we think of a rough sleeper on the street, one tormented by voices and idiosyncratic tendencies that we pass by. Maybe one who is reliant on substances and bound to a cycle of addiction, or those bound up and isolated in institutions. Then we might think of the story of Elijah. What about the one who flees for their life and their safety, with little or nothing to sustain them on their journey, at the mercy of those who they meet on the way? So simply, in our rhetoric and our national rhetoric and in our lives, these people too become nameless. These texts are about the forces, the evil, the disease, the conditions, the habits, the circumstances, call it what you will, that both pursue and possess us. And they exist both on a personal or individual level and on a societal and communal level. I want, if you will, to ask you to think with me momentarily about something that you try to avoid. Something you try to avoid. It might be something that is just a struggle to do, a mundane task in your life. It might be the conversation, that hard conversation that you avoid, and you do this over the idea of keeping the peace. Maybe you react and lash out rather than sitting in the discomfort of a shame response within you. Maybe it's the dread of confronting mindless and habitual scrolling or drinking or eating or self-talk or resentment. Maybe what we avoid comes in the form of denial. Maybe we throw something in the too hard basket, where changing a behaviour is just too far out of reach because it requires something of us that we don't want to surrender. Maybe you're not sure whether what you offer is good enough. Maybe you have fears and doubts, insecurities and worries, whether they be concern for another or just, like me, will this sermon land with anyone? As a nation, we're addicted and reliant on fossil fuels for energy production. And until recently, it's just been too hard to have the political will to do anything else. There's many things that are too hard in our day-to-day lives to have the energy to actually deal with face to face. And many of our little idiosyncratic scrollings or learned behaviours serve us in a way that give us comfort, whether they may be detrimental long term. These texts aren't about the other. They are about being human And part of what is being human is recognizing that there are pressures and forces that occupy our minds and threaten our sense of self and our community. So what do we do with this reality? Well, what I find both striking and helpful in this torment, in this struggle, is the two questions that are asked. The first is God to Elijah, "What are you doing here?" The second is Legion to Jesus, "What do you want with me?" And if we hold these two questions together, possibly we see possibilities emerge. And together a conversation or a dialogue appear. For these are questions of the Spirit. The first, what are you doing here? I'm here to find solace. I'm here to find safety. I'm here to find a place to belong. I'm here to disarm myself and just be. I'm here because I'm tired of doing. I'm here because I need to rest. I'm here because I want to be honest. I'm here because I'm afraid. I'm here because I'm ashamed. I'm here because I've got nowhere else to go. I'm here because I've always come here. I'm here just because. The yearnings of our spirit allow us to name this reality and ask this or answer this question. To be able to answer the question, what are you doing here in any given moment? To find the place within us where we can simply be with ourselves, accepted, loved, and believing that we are whole. As Shirley Murray writes in her beautiful song, "Come and Find the Quiet Centre." Come and find the quiet centre in the crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the frame where we are free. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our eyes that we can see all the things that really matter. Be at peace and simply be. What are you doing here? Perhaps the answer might be to find myself, to remind myself of who I am, to know what love is, and to just simply be. The second question, what do you want with me? This seems to be a follow-on, both a question we might pose to another or to God. Or it might be a question we ask of ourselves. Either way, it becomes a moment of dealing with ourselves face to face, looking ourselves in the mirror in a moment of honesty and vulnerability. What do I want from myself? Who am I in this world, and what is my contribution to it? How do I live a life as uniquely me, but connected to you? Change is hard. We understand this fact. Persevering in the face of struggle is hard. Finding the strength and sustenance to continue is sometimes hard too. Acknowledging and then overcoming that which somehow contains us and controls us is hard. What do you want with me? Or what do you want from me is the question. None of these things are unique to just you or I. We all experience something of this idea or this confrontation of understanding what it is and who we are in the world. Our longings, our desires, our hopes, our quest to make meaning and be faithful to the lives and opportunities we have. There is one constant though, and that is the spirit of generosity and grace, found in this instant through Christ, the Christ figure present to the persistent torment, as well as the whispering presence of God in the silence, alive to us, in us, and through us with these questions. What are you doing here? And what do you want from me? Friends, this is the act of faith. This is the act of faithfulness. The act of finding ourselves present to both ourself and the voice of the divine in our midst. The act of listening to our deep vulnerabilities and fears, and listening for the silence which surrounds us and embraces us. This sort of faithfulness is found in simply being. So please, be assured that in your doubting and your questioning, in your fleeing and your persevering, in your struggle and your torment, there is the sacred one. And the hope that we affirm is that it is not only in this, but through this very process of perseverance and struggle and torment, that liberation and healing comes. Hard fought and hard won. Come and find the quiet centre in the crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the frame where we are freed. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our eyes that we may see all the things that really matter. Be at peace and simply be.
Frame
to continue on in prayer. So please join with me in the words in bold print. For the many gifts we have received, we are grateful. For the gifts we are able to give, resources of time and money, skills, words and actions, we are grateful. May our gifts be used with love and boldness to transform lives and communities. Amen. What are we doing here? We pray in the here and now. We pray in this time and this place where we find ourselves. At home, walking the dog, in a church building, on a Sunday to Adonai. Hear our prayers for those elsewhere whose situations concern us, who are on our minds and in our hearts. What are we doing here? Hear our prayers for the future. May we do what we need to now and tomorrow, so that we play a part in the answering of our prayers. What are we doing here? Hear our prayers for the past, our memories, our regrets. May we take comfort and learn, so we are encouraged but not entangled. Amen. We're going to continue. This next song may be new to you. It is a prayer, and it is also a blessing, as the live stream will end as we finish. We'll hear the tune once